Welcome to Retained Earnings, where I, your host Dylan, use my years of corporate finance experience to teach you how to hold on to and grow your money like a business. Typically, Retained Earnings focuses on specific differences between corporate finance and personal finance to teach you about something you've never heard before. But it does require a certain baseline of personal finance knowledge to really appreciate. This episode is going to serve as a primer of everything that you need to know about personal finance to quote-unquote survive, so I can later teach you how to thrive. When you're getting into the personal finance space, there are two schools of thought of how to approach improving your financial well-being.
You can either make more money or spend less of it.
At risk of sounding a little bit too centrist, I'm going to take the very controversial stance that you actually need to master both skills. At a certain point, there's just a minimum cost of living. If your finances are in a rough shape after cutting it to the bone, then the only option is to earn more money. While I don't think it's helpful to set certain dollar thresholds, because it differs a lot based on your locale, I think a good barometer is that if median rent in your area is more than 40% of your take-home income, you're going to need to find a new job and focus on earning more money.
On the other hand,
if you've ever said the sentence, I'm investing in a high-quality purse, or I'm investing in this trip for my mental health, or you've ever found yourself buying something like organic groceries or even soda at the grocery store and then find yourself complaining about inflation these days, you're probably spending more money than you absolutely need to. As a quick fix here, I think you really need to focus on, what are wants versus needs. If your weekly grocery bill is more than $100 per week per person, you should probably ask a friend to look at your grocery receipt and see if they can help you identify any places that you could probably save a little bit more money. If nothing in your wardrobe has recently ripped, and you're buying new clothes anyway,
it's probably not actually a need, even if you have a wedding to attend or a work conference where you really want to look your best.
While solving these issues in full is outside of the scope of Personal Finance 101, I'd like you to recognize your current bias. Are you team need to make more money or save more money? If we all made more money and spent less, short-term personal finance would be solved for everyone. So figuring out where your head is to start is going to make it much easier to figure out where you need to go moving forward. If that sounds scary, I totally get it. The upside here is that the retained earning frameworks that I'll cover over the next couple of videos will be able to help you both earn more and spend less. If you really want to start getting ahead in your finances, you really have to understand compound interest. While it's outside of the scope of Finance 101, the basis of all finance is the time value of money. If you have a problem understanding interest, you should understand this. If I offer you $100 today or $100 next year, which would you rather have? Probably $100 today, because why wait? That's the basis of all interest rates. Borrowing money from someone else, you're going to pay them more the longer it takes you to pay them back. If you're lending money or investing, you should expect to get paid more. Risk is another element that's fundamental to determining interest rates. A riskier loan or financial product implies a larger rate will be needed to get that money back, because if you don't get it 100% of the time, you're going to charge a premium for that. Money loaned to the U.S. government, sometimes called a treasury bill, is about as low risk as it gets. So this is kind of your lowest possible interest rate. Not paying off your credit cards, you're at a high risk for filing bankruptcy, so the interest rate on a credit card is going to be even higher. Compound interest occurs when the interest that you're making on your money is added to the principal, and then you are earning interest on that interest. It sounds simple enough, but it can really cause your wealth to explode exponentially over time. Or it can cause your debt to explode over time. Understanding this is crucial, whether you're a saver or a spender. Here's how it works. If you have an initial investment, say $1,000 at an interest rate of 10% per year, in year one, you're going to earn 10% of that $1,000, or $100. Then in year two, the interest is now calculated on that $1,100, when it earns another 10%, which means that you're getting $110 in year two. So now you have $1,210. This means that because of compounding, you made $210 instead of just the $200 that you would expect if you were using a simple interest calculation. If you let this go for 20 years, your $1,000 is now worth over $6,700. This means that compounding is responsible for you receiving an additional $3,700 than you would expect from simple interest. The nature of compounding alone is responsible for more than doubling your money. This growth is only getting faster over time, and that's how many people are really able to build true wealth. On the other hand, if you're a borrower, compound interest can significantly increase the amount of money that you owe. You've probably heard of this before, but if you've ever felt tempted to post something like this explanation of student loan debt, the lesson is definitely not sunk in. This is the reality of just an 8.7% interest rate, well below most loans given to consumers today. The solution here is going to be to pay more than the minimum, or refinance at a lower interest rate. If this person just paid more than the minimum, this is the result instead. Understanding compound interest lets you make smarter financial decisions. Like, if you have a saving strategy, knowing the power of compound interest might encourage you to start saving a little bit more aggressively.
Because time is one of the most important inputs for compounding, the earlier you start, the better.
On the other hand, for debt management, being aware of how compounding can escalate debts, especially on high-interest products like credit cards, can prompt you to prioritize paying these off faster than your minimum payments. Because compound interest can work either for or against you, depending on whether you're saving or borrowing, recognizing and harnessing the power of compound interest is essential to building your own financial freedom. It's influencing everything from the investment vehicles that you're going to choose to how you want to manage your debt. It's a fundamental concept that is going to help you build wealth over time, or conversely, it's going to cause your debts to balloon faster than you can ever pay them. Opportunity cost is also fundamental to understanding personal finance. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative that one gives up when making a choice. While people intuitively understand this at some level, calling special attention to it is critical for personal finance. When you go to the grocery store, do you buy organic vegetables or the regular ones, and pocket the difference? We make these decisions every day without really giving it a lot of thought. The same principle applies to everything we do. If I go on this vacation, am I comfortable with the fact that I may be delaying my promotion by another 6 months? Even if your bank account is only reflecting $1,000 for the vacation, your lost wages from the perspective of that later promotion might be more than $10,000. Ouch. I think if you master the concept of opportunity cost, all of the previously discussed issues about saving money and compound interest start getting clearer answers. If you have debt that has an interest rate of 10% and you can put it in an investment that's going to get 8, what do? Well, as great as 8% is, the opportunity cost of not putting against the debt is 10%. You're losing 2% on your money for that 8% gain that you're getting. You should absolutely choose to pay off that debt. If you have the choice between buying lunch every day at work for $10 or spending $2 on something you're bringing from home,
both of those choices are valid options, but it's not just a question of $8 per workday. The actual opportunity cost is over $850,000 in retirement.
It's assuming that the difference between bringing food from home and eating out is only $8 a day. At current restaurant prices, it's probably higher. Is bringing your lunch from home worth more or less than $1 million to you? I know what my choice is, but both options are valid. On the flip side, there's a super common mistake that people make where they say, I get paid $20 an hour, so I shouldn't do anything that costs less than $20 an hour. This leads you to spending a lot of money on things like food delivery or other services that you really can't afford. When you're thinking about these calculations, you have to remember what your options are that could actually act as a replacement. If you can't get paid from working from 9 to 10 p.m., the economic value of you spending that hour on laundry doesn't mean that you just paid $20 to do your laundry. It's probably a whole lot less. You're more than welcome to assign a dollar value to your free time, and that number could be even higher than your hourly wage. It's also okay for these numbers to change on a marginal basis. If your first hour of free time is worth $100 to you, that's great, but the second hour could be worth only $10. Make sure that you're making all of your economic decisions at the margin. For the fortunate among us, we probably had a parent help us set up our first bank account. However, very rarely do parents actually help to set up the financial accounts that will enable your money to grow and leave you to figure that out for yourself. I'm going to walk through those here. First and foremost, you have savings accounts. Savings accounts are usually the first place that people think about putting extra money. In practice, though, these are really just checking accounts with a limit on the number of times you can transfer money every month. In exchange, they're paying you some amount of interest on your money, which means that your money is finally making you some money of its own. Unfortunately, many savings accounts with institutions that offer checking accounts, where most people open their first savings account, pay interest at rates that are less than 1%. This makes them just a worthless second checking account with extra steps. If you have one of these savings accounts that's paying a low interest rate, I highly recommend you close it and shift that money to a high yield savings account instead. The selection criteria for a savings account should be based on the interest rate that the institution offers, alongside the trustworthiness. You want your savings account to pay you the most that it possibly can, but if you think there's a chance that the institution's going to fail, the additional challenge of getting your money out of that bank is probably not worthwhile. This is extraordinarily unlikely with traditional banks, but some tech startups that offer banking solutions may be a little bit less stable, especially if they're offering extraordinary interest rates or anything over the treasury bill rate. As of 2024, good high-yield savings accounts are paying roughly 5% on your money, a little bit less right now. Some examples of these accounts that you should think about opening are Marcus by Goldman Sachs, an account with SoFi, or Ally Bank. Opening this account is extraordinarily simple. You're just going to go to the website of the institution of your choosing, provide them with some contact information that's probably going to include your address and social security number, and make an initial transfer from a checking account. Savings accounts are a fantastic safety blanket to make sure that you don't accidentally spend all of your cash, but they aren't putting your money to work as effectively as it can. It's a great first step, but at a higher level of financial savviness, it may not make much sense to hold a savings account at all. Instead, you're going to really want to opt for investment accounts. Investment accounts are essential tools for financial growth, which are managed through institutions called brokerages. These firms act as intermediaries in the trading of financial instruments. Popular brokerages include Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, and Robinhood, each of which offer a range of different accounts to suit different investment goals. Broadly speaking, there are two types of investment accounts. Tax-advantaged accounts, like your 401ks, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, and your HSAs. These accounts are going to offer significant tax advantages
on your investment.
For an example, with a traditional 401k or IRA, your contributions are going to reduce your taxable income, which means that while you're going to pay taxes when you pull the money out in retirement, you don't pay any taxes on the money today. On the other hand, you have Roth accounts, which are funded with after-tax money, but withdrawals in retirement are entirely tax-free. You want to be aware of contribution limits and income requirements, which can change every year. In 2023, for instance, the maximum contribution to a 401k was $20,500. These vary from account to account and aren't critical to get into here, but are worth keeping in mind. Opening these accounts is really just going to involve selecting a brokerage. During the sign-up process, you're going to provide your personal information, the same as a savings account. You're going to set up a funding source, which will either be your paycheck or a bank account.
But the most important thing to know for now is that you
have to choose an investment.
We'll get into what the best investments are for you in a later episode of Retained Earnings. But
for right now in Finance 101, just know that depositing money alone isn't enough. You must actively select funds or stocks to invest in. Most 401ks have a default plan. Before you have decided how you want to shape your investing, choose a retirement date fund for now.
The second bucket of investment accounts are non-tax advantaged brokerage accounts.
Accounts don't offer any sort of tax advantages, which means that any capital gains or dividends are going to be taxed in the year that they're realized. This does offer a little bit more flexibility on the timing at which you can withdraw, but you generally speaking don't want to bother with these accounts until you've maxed out your tax-advantaged accounts for the year. Opening a regular brokerage account is similar to opening a tax-advantaged account, but with typically fewer restrictions. Again, you'll need to provide personal identification, choose your funding method, and select your investments. Platforms like Robinhood make this particularly user-friendly, often requiring just a couple minutes to set up online. I'll be releasing a full video on Investing 101 in the next couple of weeks, so if you have no idea what to do with your accounts, don't worry, keep your eyes peeled. In order to understand personal finance, you also have to understand risk. I could go through a long, complicated treatise on risk here and define all of the economic and financial theory around it, but that's more appropriate for another video. At the financial basics level, here's what you need to know about risk. Number one, every economic action has some component of risk. If something seems truly risk-free, you almost definitely don't understand something about the transaction. Even something as simple as putting your money in a savings account has some level of risk, even if that's just an opportunity cost. Second of all, in investments, the potential reward is strongly correlated with the risk that you're taking. If you think about playing roulette at the casino, you're picking on red or black. In each of those, you have a 50-50 chance, or a little bit worse, of doubling your money. This is very similar to the profile that you would get out of an investment, except instead of losing you money on the long term, investing will generally make you money in the long term. It's completely fine to take risks with your money because that's really the only way to make a lot of it. But taking risks that you don't fully understand is how people lose their entire livelihoods. Finally, we're just going to take a quick dip into credit scores. As a hot take, by and large, people are way too concerned about their credit scores. If you aren't looking to buy a house in the near future or take a loan for another large purchase, it's entirely irrelevant.
In a regular day-to-day sense, the only time that credit scores come up or matter at all are when you're applying for credit cards. A low credit score may gate you from a better credit card that pays more points. By and large, though, credit scores aren't anything really worth worrying about.
If you are worried about it for one reason or another right now, though, here's just some basic facts. Credit scores were developed in the 1970s as a tool to measure the risk associated with lending to an individual. These scores are assessed by three main agencies, and scores range from 300 to 850. In practical terms, anything over 780 or so is considered, excellent. Credit scores are calculated based on payment history, credit utilization, length of credit history, types of credit in use, the amount of new credit that you're holding. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to read more about what's contributing to any of those individual items. Thank you for watching the retained earnings version of Personal Finance 101. Hopefully it's given you a surface level understanding of what you need to know to start your personal finance journey. There's a common misconception that building the personal finance muscle is pointless unless you already have a lot of money to invest. I hope that watching this week's video has already given you a couple of opportunities to examine your own behavior and recognize what might be applicable to you, regardless of how much money you have to spend or make already.
And recognize that there's always much more to learn in the personal finance space beyond the generic advice to stop eating so much avocado toast or just buy a house already.
Next week, we're going to discuss in a lot more detail how money grows. This will start the building blocks of moving from personal finance to treating your money like a business. After all, if you treat your money like a business, it will grow and treat you well.